Hey guys, it's Ryan here with Hobbies of Man, and today we're doing another episode of the Sword and Sorcery Book Club. We're going to be looking at another of the occult detective stories that I was reading last month in October. This is from the Best of Jules de Grandin collection, and it's the second story in the collection. It's called House of Horrors. It's written by Seabury Quinn. It's a horror / occult detective type story, although this one really just gives me more of a straight up detective story that has elements of body horror in it, right? And so it is a detective story, it is a horror story, but I wouldn't consider it an occult detective story, right? This was published in July of 1926, and the rating for this is a 3 out of 5. I think that if I was reading this when it came out, I would find it to be very creepy and crazy, but from a modern perspective, this is just slightly like less interesting than like Silence of the Lambs or something. Like it has the same, I don't know, like there's even superhero villain characters that have similar vibes to the story that are played off as jokes. Like there is no true crazy, like, you know, horror feeling to the story. It just doesn't hit me the way that I think it should. And I think that that's just going to be an issue that I have with occult detective stories from back in the day going forward. So maybe I'll stop mentioning it. But it is still kind of relevant here, right? So, yeah. The premise in this story is basically that Sam Throwbridge and Jules de Grandin, the main character, get lost during a storm. It's a storm that happens at Sam's hometown, I'm guessing, or it seems like it. And somehow they end up finding themselves near a home or a house, a giant house that Sam doesn't recognize. When they stay at the house, they find something horrific, you know, within its confines, I guess. And the story is mostly about finding out what's going on. And it's pretty cool. I liked it. You know, if it was a little bit simpler or a little bit less grotesque, it would have been basically the same as an episode of Scooby-Doo. And I think that is pretty good. So yeah, I don't hate the story. I just don't find it to be particularly like you know, creepy, if that makes sense. So like I said, the plot line here is basically a storm hits. Sam and Jules are in his car, and they have to stop because something's wrong with it. I think it got stuck in a ditch or something. And then a man comes out of his house. He finds them there, or they walk along the street to a house to see if they can get some help. And they find this man. He invites them into his home. And it starts off kind of concerningly because Sam doesn't recognize this house. He doesn't know where they are, even though they're in the same kind of vicinity of his home, or like of his hometown, right? And this kind of sets an eerie kind of feeling going on from the very beginning. The house is really creepy. It locks and opens on its own. It has some special systems put in place, you know, mechanical systems across the house that allow the owner to open and lock things across the whole house from like a central region, right? And then the owner asks them about who they are. They say they're doctors, and he invites them in to look after his sick daughter, who happens to have some sort of you know, old school disease that has a different name nowadays. And when Jules examines the girl, he realizes that there's nothing wrong with her. Like, she is not sick of what the guy said, but rather she's been drugged. And he decides to feed her sugar pills to look like he's doing something. Then he manages to stop Sam from saying anything because Sam was about to ask him why he was giving her sugar pills, right? As this is over with, the guys, Sam and Jules, are taken to their room, and they are shut in at night. And they have to have a conversation about what's going on. You know, Jules immediately clocks onto the fact that something is weird here, and he tells Sam about it. And Sam is like, well, what the fuck are we going to do about it? Like, we're locked in, right? And as they're having this conversation, we transition over to the owner, who we see is not actually a weak and frail old man, but rather pretty well off. He scurries around the house for something. We transition over to a new scene where it's late at night. The boys break out of the room. They go to see the girl, and they find out that her eyes have been operated on. They have been forced into like kind of like lazy eye territory, I guess is what you would call it. Like someone did something to her eyelids and her face so that her eyes would point outwards, right? So she'd look like kind of like Sid from Ice Age, I guess. She wakes up, she freaks out, and Jules and Sam have to talk her down. They try to keep telling her that her eyes are still beautiful, that she's a good girl and stuff like this, that she's gonna be okay now, but she knows that something's wrong with her face now, even if she can't see it, and she continuously freaks out, right? Eventually, they manage to calm her down, and we see that the weak-old frail man, that isn't actually weak and frail, is out in the rain, trying to push Sam and Jules' car down into some sort of river or some flowing water. And as he's doing this, a tree breaks in the storm and falls on top of him, and he dies. And so the story quickly resolves the issue of the person, but we still have to understand what's going on, right? And so Sam and Jules, after they have put the girl to rest for a while, decide to investigate the house. They explore the house. They find a basement. They open it, and they find out that the man was a surgeon, that he was kind of having revenge on these beautiful women and young adult women, because when he had a son, his son was going to marry this beautiful blonde woman, and she decided to break off the engagement at some point. This led his son to a depression, and through his depression, he killed himself. And so this old surgeon decided to vow revenge on all beautiful blonde women, and he started to collect them. And what he would do was use his surgeon abilities, his skills as a surgeon, to mutilate them in very serious, concerning ways, right? And so he would kind of turn them into sacks of meat slowly over time. He would keep them alive, but they would like slowly be turned into these sacks. And he kept them, and he put them away in his basement, and he would keep all of their body parts that he removed as articulated bone segments. And so like it's really fucked up, and it's really crazy and concerning and insane, but there's nothing occult about this. This is just an old crazy guy, right? Like this is like horrifying and deeply unsettling in like a very normal kind of human way. Like there's no supernatural element, right? And so I think that's why it doesn't really hit as an occult detective story. I was still very disturbed by this story, but like not in the way that I wanted it to disturb me, right? Because it wasn't occult. There's nothing supernatural about the story. And so they eventually decide to allow the girls, they're basically sacks of meat at this point, to drown in the storm. And they take the one girl that's still alive, that's basically only slightly mutilated, and take her with them back to Sam's home. At Sam's home, Jules decides to operate on her to fix her eyes, and they manage to do so, it seems like, and the story ends there. And like, is this story deeply uncomfortable? Sure, but it's not paranormal. And I think that's what really didn't work for me. Like that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5. Like it was well written. I enjoyed it. I didn't like how easy the surgeon died. Like there was no confrontation. There was no true comeuppance. Like dying is not like like you could argue that maybe it's not enough for what this guy did to all of these young ladies. That it was like 6 or 7 of them, I think, and he was going to do it to another one, right? So I almost feel like it wasn't enough, and because of that feeling, I feel like even though the story resolved itself, it wasn't satisfying enough for my taste. So those are my thoughts on that. I don't know if you guys have read the story. What do you think about it? It is deeply like concerning and unsettling, but it's not that bad, I guess. So let me know what you thought down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys later.